process right now. Usually we leave the really messy stuff to last, and for Stranger Things, that's the vines for the upside down, because that's all dipped in silicone and it's really messy. So a lot of the upside down scenes have the foam forms, but not all the final details that the scenic is going to have. We'll usually do that and blood and anything that's going to make a horrendous mess the last 3 days before we open. And that's so people don't tromp it all over the maze when they're working. Other than that, we're in props and dressing, so some scenes are more finished than others. But I'll take you through and I'll walk you through all the scenes of the maze, and then when we get to the last scene, I'll stop and we can answer any questions you guys have. Okay? Sure. So first of all, the decision of, when it comes to Stranger Things, of what to base this particular maze on, this is all based on season 1. And it pretty much is following Will's journey. It starts with Will as he leaves the Dungeons and Dragons game, just like in the pilot episode, where he's abducted by the Demogorgon. So we start in the woods. When we finish dressing out the rest of the trees and branches in here, this will be, you see Will's little bike sitting there waiting to get set up. That'll be on its side with the wheels spinning and the headlight going on and off. One of the big decisions from a creative standpoint was how to deal with the kids, because they're all middle school. So that means they're about 12, so when you're working with actors at average age is probably like 20, it doesn't really work to put a wig on somebody and go, "You're Dustin," it just doesn't look right, it looks off. So one of the ways we deliver the kids in the maze is through the audio. So the kids are always talking on their walkie-talkies, particularly when they're out looking for their friend. So this whole scene is a 5.1 surround sound system. You're going to hear the Demogorgon moving through the woods, but you're also going to hear all of the kids searching for Will, as well as the search party looking for him. As far as the Demogorgon, there's kind of like 2 huge challenges with this maze: how to create the upside down, which we'll talk about when we get to it, and then how to create the Demogorgon. And while he is at our makeup, you just missed him, he just left actually. We had a suit down here and we were making sure all of the performers could get on and off set. But I can show you a picture of him. Hang on one sec. Werewolf. So many pictures. Here we go. Okay. So, first of all, that's his head. See all
That's pretty great.
Whoa.
Just to do the teeth, is my makeup artist was just here, and he's like, "Yeah, each one of these is like 3 hours just to do the teeth." And then it's a creature suit, so there's a person wearing this. How we did this is the company that did the practical Demogorgon for the show is a company called Spectral Motion, and they're here in LA, and they're a company we know and have worked with a lot in the past. And so initially our thought was, we'll get the molds, just like when we did Alien vs. Predator. I was able to go to the company that produced the movie, get the actual molds for the Predator, and work with that. When we got the molds for the Demogorgon and we took a look at them, we immediately realized, we can't use this for us, because a lot of it was computer animation. So when they filmed it, even though they had a guy in a costume, his whole head was a green hood because they digitally replaced everything here. The feet were like literally sticking out of the leg, and there were green hoodies or booties on the feet, which told us, okay, that's a digital effect as well. So rather than use the actual sculpt, what we did is we had a positive made, and our sculptor just sat there with the actual one from the show and was able to sculpt everything to look exactly like the show. How we deliver the Demogorgon, much like the show, we kind of tease it until we want to reveal it for the first time, head to toe. So out here in the woods, as you're going through the woods and you're passing the perimeter of the Hawkins lab, the Demogorgon comes out of the woods at you, but it's just like the show. You see him kind of backlit, just the way that Will saw him when he crashed his bike. So you'll see the Demogorgon, and then we come to the buyer's house, which is around the corner. So as you're exiting the woods, you're going to see the shadow of the Demogorgon behind the clothesline. That's something we filmed Saturday. And then you come to the buyer's house. From a props and dressing standpoint, one of the things that's challenging about this show is it's all period. It all takes place in the 1980s. But when you really start digging into Stranger Things, you realize really that means the 70s, because the buyer family doesn't have a lot of money. So most of the decor in their home looks like it's from the 70s. So that meant I had to send our props and dressing crew all over the place looking for items that would match the decor in the show. That's a really ugly but good example of what I'm talking about. That hideous burnt orange recliner couch swing thing from the 70s is one of the things they had to go find. And another thing that you don't always think about is the wallpaper. So when you come into the house, we have to match all the wallpapers from the show, so these all match the show pretty exact. The other big element in this room is the Christmas tree lights. It's funny when you get into the reality of actually translating a TV show to a live event. There's things you realize along the way. They were propping this scene and they were attaching all the lights, and there's just dozens of strands of Christmas lights, and trying to get the old C9 bulbs and all that. When I did my lighting walk on Friday, I went, so these all have to individually chase. The lights in the show, they don't come on all at once. They come on 2 or 3 at a time, and they're usually moving you, telling you where to go. So I go, these are all plugged in together, like you would plug in Christmas tree lights. That didn't work. You need individual control of every single light in the scene. So every one of these lights is now a home run back to the lighting board, which is about 150 feet that way. So that's because we want to be able to move you through it just like you see it on the show. The alphabet wall, which is obviously super iconic to the show, is an example of that. You're going to see the R light up, then the U, then the N, R-U-N, R-U-N, because Will communicates with his mom, Joyce, through lights, and he's telling her, the Demogorgon's coming, you better get out of here. This is mostly propped. The only thing that's missing in this scene is some special effects. 2 in particular. One's the telephone. That's just one of those details from the show that we wanted to capture. It's a rotary phone. Joyce has to keep buying new phones because her son tries to contact her, and then the Demogorgon gets a hold of it, and the whole thing burns out and sparks. So that's a special effect that our special effects team is creating with little tiny LED lights that make it look like the phone is shorting out. And then we come into Will's room, which is in the middle of getting propped right now.
Cool.
So again, this is a good example of props and dressing and everything they have to find that matches the time period. This is an exact wallpaper that's, obviously like bicentennial, so it's kind of a weird combination of 70s and 80s stuff. And the Jaws poster will go on the wall and all that. So they're in the kind of almost there, still have some props and dressing to go. The lamps are all going off in the scene just like they are in the show. You're going to meet Joyce here. She's freaked out. She's got the axe because she's seen the Demogorgon trying to come through the wall and get her. And now you're going to see the Demogorgon break through that wall behind you, but you'll really only just see his hand in this case. So we're just teasing, a little bit of him as we go along. And then from here we go outside the house to the backyard where the shed is, where Will was abducted. And then you're going to meet the Demogorgon face to face. So the Demogorgon attacks us from inside the shed, and then we come to Castle Byers, which is around the corner, which is Will's refuge in the woods. So they're finishing up all the trees and foliage in here. At this stage of the project, you always see pictures all over the place. That's the prop and dressing crew taking all the pictures that I get for them. On a show like Stranger Things, I probably went through 40,000 pictures, something like that. And then my team has all of every single set piece, every single prop, so that they can replicate it exactly. As you're coming around the Castle Byers, you get hit by the Demogorgon again. And then he sends us through this portal between the trees, and we enter the Upside Down, which is going to be a total mess right now because it's in the middle of its process. But I'll get a flashlight so I can show you what's up. Come on in. It's all covered in plastic right now.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, there's a lot of different steps to creating this. And this is probably one of the more challenging things to figure out. On the show, the Upside Down is all computer animation. All the floating orbs, all of that stuff CGI. So we spent about a day off-site where we built this scene life-size as a mock-up, and then just tried a bunch of stuff to see what we could do to replicate the Upside Down, particularly the falling particles. What we ultimately landed on was a combination of different things. We have the dimensional trees, which you can see they were spraying foam around the bases of them. Then we come in with all the silicone and vines to dress that. We have a massive backdrop of the Upside Down that's from the show, who's on the set for the show. And then if you look, you'll see little tiny blobs of white all over the place, hanging all over the set, up in the air above us. What those are is fiber optic strands that are individually wrapped one at a time with cotton. And the reason cotton is used is it's to diffuse the light source. And then you can see that there's like a fan down here blowing that plastic. So there's tiny little fans hidden all over the set. So when the plastic isn't up, all of these kind of move around like the orbs in the upside down move. And then on top of that, we're projecting computer animation as well. So there's all these different pieces that combine together to create the upside down. Nancy will be in this scene with her flashlight, freaked out, looking for Jonathan, as is the deer, which is the Demogorgon drags into the upside down. And then the Demogorgon comes out at you, and this is the first time you see him head to toe. And then from there, we leave the upside down, and we come to the Hawkins lab. So we're in the middle of building the forest for this. This will be the power and light van from the show. This is where you meet all of Dr. Brenner's goons in the white hazmat suits with the flashlights. So they're the threat that's coming out to chase you into the lab. Now we get to use the height of the soundstage to our advantage, so everything starts to get a lot taller. When we go inside the lab, we're pretty much picking up where the show began. There's the opening shot is that guy running down the hallway with the emergency lights going off, and he gets into an elevator and the Demogorgon grabs him. So that's what we're doing in the first scenes inside the lab. So this is the elevator, so you'll see the guy, he's an animated effect. You'll see his legs thrashing and kicking. You hear the Demogorgon eating him from above. Chief Hopper will pop out of that door behind us, fire off a warning shot and tell us, go, go, go. More of Dr. Brenner's goons come into the scene, and then everybody goes that way, but there's a big lift in the way, so I'm going to take you through the actor entrance. Just watch the ground. There's some loose things, cables and whatnot. Yeah. So what's left to do in here is all the vines and silicone and all that wet, viscousy stuff that's attached to this. You can see the little white blobs, which are all the fiber optic lights. We're using projection in this scene as well. This is the room where you're going to meet Dr. Brenner. He comes through the door behind us. When he talks to us, he treats us pretty much like he treats Eleven when he's telling her, it's okay, it's calling out to you, it wants you to find it. So he's sending all of us through the gate and into the upside down. So that when we're going through the upside down, even the curtains are made of that weird silicone material, so you have to kind of swim through that to get inside. Once we go inside, we go to the void, which is that pitch black environment that Eleven ends up in, where she finds the upside down version of the Castle Byers. She also finds dead Barb, and she finally finds Will.
When was I know that you said you work up to like the deadline with regards to the construction. What was the closest you've gotten to opening night with
I've been in a maze painting it myself. The night before. Chris and I have literally been in mazes finishing them ourselves. We're always the last guys out every year. We'll leave at like 2-3 in the morning, and there's no one else left in the park, and it's always us. It's just the way it always ends up. We just don't stop. We just keep going.
How's maze design from Ireland?
Interesting. Yeah, it totally changed the way I had to work with, particularly with Chris, because we've been such close partners for so many years. And Chris Williams is art director, production designer, but we create everything together and always have. And the way we used to work, like when we would be putting this maze together, is we'd be in my office with Post-it notes on the wall, just going, okay, here's a line of scenes, here's a line of characters, and then we just literally put it together like that. So that wasn't possible now, because I moved to Ireland in November, right after the event. So what I did instead is I wrote a outline instead of going right into the treatment. I wrote like a really detailed outline and put pictures together, and then I would send it to him. And the way we always have worked together, which I think works really good, is we give each other mutual veto power. So like I have a veto that if I don't agree with a scene or something in the maze that he's suggesting, I could say, no, I don't like it. And he can do the same thing to me. But that forces us to like try to convince each other. Yeah. So we always have to like sell each other on the idea if we don't agree. And there's oftentimes we don't agree. So either we convince each other, like talk the other person into, no, this really should be this way.
Poltergeist is a good example. We had totally different approaches to that maze. He had one idea, I had a totally different idea. And in that case, I came around to his opinion. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go for your idea. Let's do it your way. And then other times, like Classic Monsters is probably more my way of doing it. And then I had to bring him along to seeing it the way I saw it. But that what's good about that is while we're really close partners on everything, our skill sets are very different. He's the art director, production designer. His skills are scenic and props and more lighting than me, and I'm more writing and audio and video and producing and that type of aspects of production. So it's a nice way to balance each other. So neither of us can ever totally geek out on something without the other one calling him on it. Like if there was something I was putting in the maze just because I have a particular, I love this and I want that, I don't care if anybody else likes it, I'm putting it in the maze, he can always say, no, we're not doing that. And then we have to work it out. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it works. It's worked for 13 years at least. a lot of disagree. We always disagree, but that's always a good creative partnership. You should disagree.
Disagreements are good.
Yeah. Then you just have to work it out. But on this one, we were pretty much of the same mind. We both pretty quickly arrived at this really should just be season 1. Let's just take the time to do it right, and that worked out really good. So. And luckily, like I said, the Duffer Brothers had the exact same idea. So now we go into the void. We come across Castle Byers, but it's in its decrepit state at this point. So this still has to get all the crazy vines and all that stuff. You're going to meet Barb. She's dead. Will, he's not dead. He comes to life. And then the Demogorgon attacks you again. I think Barb is around the corner because they were painting all this. And then when you leave the Upside Down, you find yourself in the Hawkins Middle School. And it's that sequence where the agents have caught up with 11 and the kids. And she uses her powers to make them all bleed out of there. There's Barb. Yep. Barb pre-cocooning. She has to be cocooned yet. And these guys are going to be the agents. There's another cocoon body for the Upside Down over there. And then this is using a scrim illusion. So you're hearing the Demogorgon pounding on the walls as if he's trying to break through and get to you. You hear 11 say, blood, blood, and the kids saying, blood, that equals Demogorgon. And then there's a big transition where we light through this wall. This is a scrim. You can see right now just because the stage lights are on. But under theatrical lighting, this looks like every other wall. And then that disappears and you see a big, huge Demogorgon behind the wall. And then we finish up in the science room. So a lot about trying to nail the feeling of a certain time period comes down to things you don't necessarily think of right off the top of your head, like T-bar ceiling, like this one. It's pretty much every classroom I was ever in the 1980s. So normally we don't worry about ceilings like this, but we did in this scene because it was important for the feel of the science room. A lot of it comes down to props and dressing. Pretty much everything you see in the room I would have written in the treatment. And some of it's very blatant Easter eggs, like the Rube Goldberg contraption. That's something you see just for a second on the show, but it's so much in the spirit of the kids that we put it in the maze. And then now they have to finish up with all the stuff that goes on the bulletin boards and all that. In this scene, 11 is going to be vanquishing the Demogorgon, so 11 is going to be right about here. The Demogorgon's pressed up against the blackboard. And this is the finale scene, just like the show ends with this moment. And that is Stranger Things. So if there's any other questions I can answer for you guys, I'd be happy to do so.
In an average night, how many performers are in that full Demogorgon costume that you showed us?
I think there's on set, there's about 10 Demogorgons, I think, all told. So that would be 15, 16 performers.
Wow.
That have to, yeah, so we built a lot of Demogorgons. And that's a very long, labor-intensive process.
How often do those switch out throughout the night?
It depends on the role. There's ones that are full body, so they're wearing the suit head to toe, the feet, everything. Those are more like 30 on, 30 off. There's some that are partial Demogorgons that you're seeing. You can tell, like, if it's in the shed, you're only seeing them from here up. So they can go a little longer on set, but it just depends on what their action is, what we're asking them to do. Any other questions I can answer?
Outside of the Upside Down, which part of the maze did you find hardest to kind of conceptualize and design?
Well, the Demogorgon itself, I mean, that was certainly tough. I mean, being in a soundstage enabled us to go, okay, we can do we can do the gate 30 feet tall, which is, I think, roughly what it is. That's a very tall set for Horror Nights. Normally, you know, our sets are maybe 10 feet tall or that neighborhood, so to triple the size of something, but it's because that's what the show is. So everything we're doing is based on what we're seeing in the show and going, how do we best replicate this to make you feel like you're living the show?
Got it.
For audio, is it different audio in every room?
Yeah, the audio alone, it takes me about 8 hours to go through an episode when I'm looking or listening for audio. So every episode I spend about 8 hours going through it and writing time code notes to go, okay, you know, 17 minutes and 38 seconds and 15 frames, this happens. And by the time I finished the treatment, I had about 20 pages of 10-point font of just audio keys. So that's dialogue, effects, music, and I need it broken out like that. So then I gave that to Netflix and said, somebody is going to have to spend a lot of time doing this, which they did, which is great. And then we get all those materials, and then we can put it together however we need to put it together for the maze. So there's multi-channel audio every scene, but it's all, you're hearing the real music from the show, you're hearing the real sound effects from the show, and you're really hearing the real dialogue as well. Sometimes you have to record it. In the case of Stranger Things, we did not. We were able to use all the talent. Sometimes it depends on how film contracts are written. Sometimes, you know, I'll have to become a character. I was always Freddy Krueger every time we did Nightmare on Elm Street. It just depends on how it's written. And in the case of this show, we're able to use everybody. So it was perfect.
Do you find it harder to work on something that's movie-based than something that's an original concept?
Than an original concept?
Yeah. I guess there's kind of like a fight between back and forth because it's like a passion original concept and something where you have to go against other people like at Netflix or something.
No, I mean, when we're dealing with a movie or a TV show, our job is to replicate that to the best of our ability. And what's challenging about that is when you're filming a movie or a TV show, and particularly with special effects, you only need to get it right once, and it's going to live forever in celluloid, you know. In our world, it has to work right every 10 seconds. So a lot of times when we're trying to figure out how to do an effect, like if it's Poltergeist and it's, you know, making the meat crawl across the counter or something as simple as that, you know, you got to think about it from all these different ways that you would never have to think about it if you were doing it on the set. You know, you have to think about the performer and what's their body position and how are they doing it ergonomically, and that becomes a challenge to replicate things that are special effects in movies and TV shows. But television shows, there's just so much more material to deal with. So from a research standpoint, it's a lot harder because you're just, you know, watching every episode a million times. And but usually what that means is there's a wealth of material that to put in the maze. So a lot of times you're cutting. You know, we didn't do too much of that with this particular maze. Pretty much everything we wanted to do, we were able to fit because we had this big footprint inside the soundstage to take advantage of.
I'm curious, what's been the biggest cut you've had to do in one of the other mazes for this year?
Biggest cut?
Yeah, where you're like, oh, we can't keep
Cut
this.
the creature in the monster maze.
Oh,
That hurt. Yeah, that was space. You know, a lot of times when you're designing mazes, when I write it, I'm trying to think of the physical space, and I'm trying to the best of my ability to imagine what Chris's ground plan is going to look like, but he can't draw it until I write it. And inevitably, there's always a moment. Didn't so much happen here because we have, again, it's a soundstage. We have a lot more space. But almost always, there's always scenes that end up on the cutting room floor just because I can't fit it in. And in that particular maze, I had the creature in there. He was only in one scene. We designed him. And then the space wasn't working out, and it was like, and then I just went, well, you know, he was from the 1950s. So I mean, no, I would, of course, would like to have the character in the maze. But, you know, hopefully it's successful and we get another opportunity in the future to do something with that particular brand. So, you know, that's the other thing about this only being season 1, too, because, you know, there's all kinds of cool stuff in season 2. But when we were trying to combine them together, it was like, wow, we're missing all these beats that if I'm a fan of the show, I want to see. You know.
So is that kind of like your first instinctual thing is like, if I'm a fan, this is what I would want to see?
Yes, always think
That's how
like
you
a
go from
fan.
there.
Yeah, I talk to them every day on Twitter. I run Twitter for us. I get their opinion whether I ask for it or not, which is a great back and forth with the fans. So they're the ones, to give them credit, they're the ones who pointed out Stranger Things to me the minute it aired. All of a sudden my Twitter blew up and it was like, you got to watch Stranger Things, you got to watch. And I watched it because of our fans. That's the whole reason I watched it the first time. It was like, wow, all of our fans are telling me I should check out something. I should probably check it out. And, you know, when we're doing Horror Nights, we have no time to do that. You know, when we're in production, we don't have time to watch anything. We don't have time to tie our shoes. So, you know, it's always like when we come up for air, it's time to research stuff again. So they very much made me aware of this particular brand. And then, you know, it blew up as soon as it came on TV, so that helped too.
Do you have a favorite maze that you've worked on?
Over the years, I don't have a personal favorite maze. I mean, I have mazes that meant something personally, like the first Alice Cooper maze would have been a huge thing for me because he was my childhood hero. And to get to, like, actually later in life actually get to work with your childhood hero is pretty bizarre. Black Sabbath was like that too, because I was a huge Alice Cooper fan. I was a huge Black Sabbath fan. Then one day you're backstage in Texas at a concert with Ozzy Osbourne and the gang and going, hi, here we go. You know, we're working together. Those always meant a lot personally, just because there were things as a kid. I think the Monster Maze for me this year is like that because I was, you know, I've been a Monster fan since I was 4. So that's like a lifetime, you know, of wanting to do something but being terrified to do it, you know, because it's a huge challenge to try to make that work in modern day.
Is there a, without making the Universal Licensing Department go crazy,
Uh-oh.
is there a white whale that you would like to do?
Well, I'm not going to tell
maze
you.
of?
That would be foolish of me because then I wouldn't be able to do it. Honestly, I've done almost every one of them. Exorcist took me 10 years. Try to get the rights to that. Finally did. Shining, another one. Alice Cooper, Black Sabbath. The Monsters is another one of those ones that would definitely be like one I've always, you know, wanted to do but was afraid to do. There's still properties out there I want to do, but I have to get them. So
Yeah.
it's part of the hunt that always goes on.
What's on your wish list?
I'm not going to tell you. No, because I have to sell the people that own these things, so I don't want it in the press. No.
Spoilers.
No. But you know, we've been fortunate. We've gotten to do just about every major franchise in horror there is. There's still, you know, the nice thing is that horror continues to evolve and change. Stranger Things is a great example. This is, I'll be the first to say, this is not horror. You know, this is horror, sci-fi, fantasy. It's a lot of different things. It's not strict horror. But that's the fun thing about how horror is evolving. I thought it was particularly interesting. If you look at the Academy Awards last year, you know, Shape of Water, well, again, pretty much fantasy, but has horror elements to it. But I know the heart of Guillermo del Toro. I've worked with him. That's his monster movie that he's always wanted to make, you know, and that won Best Picture. I've never in a million years thought I'd live to see that day. Get Out and seeing the success that movie had and winning the Oscars that won. It's a pretty exciting time in horror. Horror is evolving and changing as it always does. So as it evolves, we evolve with it and try different things. And this is a great example. This is a really, you know, different thing from where we started. You know, when I started doing this, it was Freddy, Jason, Leatherface, Michael Myers. You know, we did all the things that were really obvious slasher movies. And over the years, we've tried all kinds of different things. And this is just another evolution of that.